Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecini. We are presented by The Athletic. Today on the show, I'm still in Shepperton, Victoria. I'm still in this lovely regional town that exists 2 hours outside of Melbourne. I will be going home this afternoon, which is great. So this is the last time you'll have to see these yellowish beige curtains behind me. But the better news is I'm here with Robby Kalland, and we're going to laugh and we're going to have a good time because I always have fun with Robby Kalland. We're going to talk days 2 and 3 of NBA free agency. On the list, we got Damian Lillard requesting a trade from Portland. We've got whatever the fuck the Houston Rockets are doing. We've got Brook Lopez re-signing in Milwaukee. Austin Reaves going back to the Lakers. Max Strus getting to Cleveland. We got a bunch of extensions like Domantas Sabonis, Tyrese Haliburton, Desmond Bane, and LaMelo Ball. We've got Donte DiVincenzo going to the Knicks. We've got Obi Toppin going to the Pacers. We've got all of it happening and more. Robby, that was a minute of intro. What's going on, buddy?
It's a lot of things we're talking about, man. It's been good. You know, it's the first weekend of the new league year, which is always busy, always fun to kind of see where teams are going, what they're trying to do, and then also try to figure out what some teams are trying to do, as you alluded to with the Rockets. Because like sometimes it's very clear. You have teams like the Phoenix Suns, you have teams like the Los Angeles Lakers, where you're like, okay, I see the vision, I see what we're doing. And then we have the Houston Rockets, who I'm not 100% sure. And there's a couple teams like that where you're just like not 100% sure what we're trying to do, what the goal is, and those are the teams that are most fun in these off seasons. Like I was thinking about this on the first night because I'm looking around and I'm like, man, these are a lot of like, all right, I get a lot of these deals, you know, like I understand what we're doing. I'm like, front offices have just gotten too smart. And they all have the same type of people. You know, everybody has the cap guys and everybody has the front offices as they get bigger and they get more information. We don't get necessarily kind of the wild like shit that we used to. Like we'll never replace, like we're never going to get another 2016 because we're never getting another cap spike like that, which I disagree with. I think the league should do it again in 25. Like
for the content.
I think that for the content, and also like let's put these teams to the test. Like that's a real like, can you be disciplined? Like, don't like take the guardrails off, man. Like, enough with this.
Take the guardrails off Tillman. Let's give Tillman a bunch of money.
What if? Tell Tillman he's got to spend $80 million in an offseason. Come on, you know. Like, I need to see it. Like the Kings. Like we saw the Kings were pretty disciplined this year. Can you do it again? Troy Weaver. Can you do it again? Like, I need to see a $50 million cap bump where everybody's got money and like you're trying to figure out what to do with it because like. We're never going to get another Mozgov, man. We're just not. It's just not out there, and we're just going to have to cling to those memories. But at least we still have some teams like the Rockets who end up with $64 million to spend and don't seem to know exactly how to do that properly.
Yeah, from Hopper N in the comments, we're never getting another DeAndre Jordan situation that required a genuine multi-day free agency that may have included like a hostage situation at one point.
Yeah, I mean, bring it back. You never know. Well, the other thing is like we're never going to get like and again, we need the cap spike, so we get teams like the Mavs to have cap space because that's the problem. The Mavs never have cap space, but I believe the Mavs would do some wild shit if they had $50 million to spend. They just don't ever have it because they just always trade for guys and just like lob money out. Like I want the chaos back.
What was the hilarious Chris Broussard report? Wasn't it like Mark
Cuban is driving around Dallas? Just like screaming out the window of his car, where is DeAndre?
DeAndre, where you at?
Blake Griffin with the chair tweet. It was an all-timer. That was an incredible the entire 2016. There were even some weird ones in 17. I think 17 was the year we got the Tim Hardaway Jr. restricted free agency, like offer sheet from the Knicks. That was like 4 for 72. Like we used to get some like wild. We also don't get offer sheets anymore. You know, like
we used
everybody
to build
just
things in this country.
We really did. You know, Joe Biden, like we need to work on some things. We need to bring back restricted free agency. We need to bring back the American big man. Have you seen the FIBA roster? Like we don't have any centers anymore. They all want to be point guards. Every 7-footer that comes out of America wants to dribble and shoot. hit the buffet line, get in the post, let's work. Like we need to go back a little bit and bring back some things. But anyway, that was an even longer rant than your intro. So let's get to some stuff.
Okay, let's talk about Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard has asked for a trade from the Portland Trailblazers. Seemingly, according to Sam Amick at The Athletic, he wants to get to Miami. Miami seemingly does not have the assets to execute the best Damian Lillard deal possible for the Portland Trailblazers. Adrian Wojnarowski reported from Joe Cronin that they will do what is best for the organization. It is interesting. The leverage aspect of it is particularly interesting to me because on one hand, Damian Lillard has 3 more years plus an exorbitant team option that he will be paid like it's like $65-70 million, something crazy like that, when he is 36 years old. And on the other hand, you would think that might not give him a lot of leverage. You have him for team control. You can trade for him. What is he just not going to play for you and not collect that money? On the other hand, what team is willing to trade for a player that may not want to be there, that you're paying $235 million, whatever the fuck the number is, over the course of the next 4 years? So the leverage aspect being like at a standstill in some regards is actually really interesting. I think there is also like a very real aspect of this that is like Damian Lillard is trying to do this like as delicately as possible. And yes, you can point to the fact that like there have been a lot of weird, strange public statements from Lillard and things like that. But I do think he's like trying to care for the Portland fan base, trying to like keep everybody engaged, trying to like make sure that the Portland area does not hate him for this. But if you're going to divorce from a team, there's going to be bad feelings. And I don't know if we're going to get to that point where he's willing to like really put his foot forward and like shove this thing through.
So it's kind of like like he is more of, when we talk about superstar trade requests and like who's going to force their way where, there's like, I think there's levels to it. You obviously have a Bradley Beal who has a straight up no trade clause, who can literally say like there. And then you have like a Kyrie Irving who's enough of a wild card that nobody's going to really take the risk on him unless they think they're the ones that can re-sign him. Or he might just like sit out, or he might like, he's enough of a, and then you have the Kevin Durant's and the Damian Lillards who can say, I want to be here. And maybe you can get to them to there, but you also really believe like those dudes love hoop enough that they're just going to show up and do their job, right? Like, I think he's in that realm of like, he loves doing this. He's not, and then Harden is kind of between the Kyrie and the KD realm. I think he's kind of in the middle there. And so I'm with you. I'm fascinated by how this pans out and what teams actually get involved, because there's a number of teams that could. There's a number of teams that can beat the Heat's best offer. Like, that's not hard to do, really. But it's a matter of, like you said, like who's willing to do that and who thinks they can give up that offer and be competitive to the level that they want to be. And that's the other thing is like, it's much like what the Knicks had to do to go get Carmelo Anthony. Is like when you have to trade the guys to get the star, it's not often you still have a contending team around them. We saw it happen with the Suns last year. Like the Suns got Kevin Durant and then they just didn't have anybody on the roster to be competitive enough. And so it's like, can you go get it and leave yourself with the roster that you need around them? And so it's like, is there a team that's deep enough with youngish talent to believe, hey, like if we give up 2 or 3 of these guys, 2 of these guys and some picks, we still have 7 deep, 8 deep to be a playoff team? Or are you going to end up being a team that has 4 or 5 like Phoenix did, and then you're in trouble trying to fill out the roster and fill out a rotation? It's the hardest thing to figure out if you're a team, because it's so easy to be like, wow, I mean, if we get Damian Lillard, like you look at Philly is a team that people have floated as a possibility. And it's like, do you give up Tyrese Maxey to get him? And is Portland valuing Tyrese Maxey given all of their young assets are guards too? There's a lot of weird, sticky situations that have to kind of resolve themselves to figure out who the actual suitors outside of Miami and I guess Brooklyn maybe could be. And yeah, I don't know. And I think that's why I really do believe this is going to be a weeks long situation where it's going to take some time because they're not going to want to rush into this, and they don't really have a reason to. Like they don't need to go sign guys. Like these teams these other teams are going to need to sign the veterans to fill out the roster. The pressure is going to be more, the longer this drags on, the pressure ups on the team trying to trade for Dame, because you can't let all of the free agents start to get picked off. You know, if the Clippers pull off a James Harden trade and they can fill out their roster from there, then you're going to lose some more of those guys. The Warriors are going to keep filling out. You know, it's like you're going to kind of lose out on the opportunity there the longer this goes on. So I think Portland's going to rightfully wait a while and see if somebody else comes to the window. If Toronto comes to them and says, here, we'll give you one of our wings and some salary guys to go for it. I'm not sure. I'm like, who do you think are the other teams outside of Miami, Brooklyn, Philly, Toronto, I guess, are the ones that come to top of mind for me? And like Philly, I don't even know if they're really in the mix.
Well, Philly, I think, makes a lot of sense. Like the thing I always try to figure out for teams is, what are you motivated to do? How motivated are you to go get somebody like this? And I think Philly is probably more motivated than anybody at this point, given James Harden. Like you could do something probably along the lines of a 3-team deal where James Harden goes to the Clippers, Tyrese Maxey goes to Portland, and then a big swath of picks and Terrence Mann and, you know, Norman Powell and guys like that go up to Portland. Like that's still not a great deal though, is the problem. Like it'd have to be Maxey plus like a bunch of things, like,
and neither of those teams have picks to trade is the other thing,
right?
Like, you know,
so like I think that you can get to like 3 picks basically, right?
Yeah.
So it can't really be that. The Miami thing is like, you probably it is interesting. I saw Bobby Marks come up with the idea of like using Ben Simmons as ballast going to Portland, and then like doing 5 firsts where it's like Tyler Hero goes up to Brooklyn and, you know, Simmons and like 5 or 6 firsts go to Portland. I still don't think that's enough for Lillard, given that Miami team is going to be good, and that the Brooklyn situation is like, all those picks are coming from very different situations.
Also Brooklyn adding another wing would
Phoenix.
be very funny.
Yeah. And like he particularly added like a bunch of picks that were like 6 years away. And if I'm Portland, I don't want picks that are,
I want picks
5
now.
or 6 years out. I want picks now that can help me build around Scoot Henderson. So it is tricky. I think the interesting team that like really could do something is Utah. It's just like Damian Lillard has to want to play in Utah. Like I just don't know if that's the case. Like Utah could do something like Taylor Hendricks and all of the millions of picks that they have. And then you could throw Damian Lillard with Lauri Markkanen and Jordan Clarkson and Walker Kessler. And you maybe have to throw Kessler to Portland. I don't know. But like you could do something. You could actually make a real dent there, I think, in that case.
So here's one. They wanted Scoot, but they're the team that has the picks. What if the Pelicans get involved?
It's an interesting one, right?
If they put, I don't know if they put Zion in the mix, but if they put Zion on the table in a pick, like if they're just ready to be done with the Zion Williamson experience, they are the team that can put the best offer forward.
Assuming Portland has interest in Zion. And I feel like that's probably going to be a polarizing asset. Like, I think you're either going to be really in on that or you're not going to be in on that. You know what I mean? And I don't know necessarily how Portland feels about it. If they feel about Zion, like, hey, we have Zion, we have Scoot, we can create this like incredibly fun up-tempo attack. I'm intrigued. That would be particularly funny because we'd be reuniting the Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum backcourt that worked so well for so many years in Portland.
Be great. Get Dame and CJ back together. Brandon Ingram, but Brandon Ingram would be the best wing they ever played with.
Right.
Look,
you have Trey Murphy, who's really good.
Trey Murphy, who can shoot.
There's
Herb Jones. Obviously some guys would go.
It's a better team than anything Portland ever had in terms of on paper talent.
I'm just saying, that could be a fun one. And I won't be surprised if there's at least at some point a rumbling, because Portland should try to make that a rumor. Because again, they're the team that can offer the most. They have 1 billion picks from the Drew trade and the Anthony Davis trade. They have picks now. Like you said, I think that's the other thing that people kind of forget is if you're a rebuilding team, you don't want the picks when your guys are extension eligible. You don't want to run into a situation where Scoot Henderson 5 years down the road is now tired of being in a rebuild because you're just getting to the assets you got from the Damian Lillard trade.
Yep.
So so if you're I think the Pelicans are the team that could, or even if they just get involved somehow with maybe they're a team that could facilitate to get Hero doesn't fit there. The problem is Hero's a pretty terrible asset to be trying to shop to a third team.
Correct.
If we're being honest, especially with what a lot of teams are going to want. If you're,
we just saw what Jordan Poole went for, right? It took a first round pick plus a former first round pick plus a second round pick plus Ryan Rollins to send back Chris Paul, who's on an expiring deal, to get Jordan Poole off the roster. Considering Tyler Hero. Yeah, that's the thing. I don't. There are probably teams out there that don't consider Tyler Hero a negative, but I don't think there are many that are we got to go get Tyler Hero to pay him $30 million a year.
I mean, look, who watches a team go to the finals without a guy, and it's we need the guy they got to the finals without.
100%. So it is hard. It's a very hard situation, I think, to figure out. And honestly, I wonder if part of that is why Damian Lillard waited as long as he did. Also, I wonder if a big part of why Damian Lillard waited as long as he did was to get Jeremy Grant paid.
Hey, Jeremy Grant should send an edible arrangements towards Damian Lillard's house because, that is a 5-year, $32 million contract.
Yeah, $32 million per year.
I don't know if you've already talked about this with somebody, but who are they bidding against? Why are we giving them a fifth year?
That is exactly what my response was when I did the podcast 2 days ago. I have no idea who they were bidding against to give him a fifth year. I said, look, if you need to give him 4-115, something like that.
4-120, I don't care. But who's adding the fifth? No one else can literally add the fifth year. And so who is offering a 4-year deal worth more than that you were scared of?
That's what I was trying to figure out too. It screams to me that there had to be some sort of prearranged agreement there.
I think Matt Moore had said that was done from All-Star.
Sure.
That had been out there
and they just didn't want to
months. And I guess you don't pull it, but 5. I mean, he was really good for them last year, but 5.
The problem is you can't move this deal now.
That's right.
This is a hard contract to move over the course of the next 3 years because he's overpaid by probably $7 million a year, $6 million a year. And he's going to be 30 soon. And that deal goes through, I think 33 or 34 in terms of age. Those last 2 years are going to be pretty tough. So yeah, I mean, Jeremy Grant's a good player. I thought he had his best year last year, but
he was terrific last year for them, but look, he's the type of wing that you want next to that young backcourt. And I get it, but also it's pretty inhibitive of making other moves in a rebuild. It kind of caps what you can do.
Yeah.
I don't know. And the other thing with the Dame trade is does getting off of Nurkic's deal count as an asset, or do you just not care at this point? Is it a sunk cost to just keep Nurk for a while? That's the other thing people are talking about. If they can find somebody to take Nurk, but
the real reason I want to get off Nurkic is that he's a terrible screener, and I want somebody that makes sense with Scoot Henderson. Like I
That's
actually don't
fair.
think he makes sense with Scoot. So yeah, that's they need
But
to
like,
find a way.
what does that count for? Because people were talking about like maybe they could go, maybe he could go to
Well,
San Antonio or something, like could just eat it as a third team or.
when the other
But like,
piece of
does
it is
that
now
count?
Anthony Simons. Like, what do you do with Anthony Simons, right?
Yeah.
Like, because Anthony Simons, I think, is an asset. He is
Sure.
better than Tyler Hero and is getting paid $5 million less for 1 year less on his contract. So, like, that's a player that somebody should want to acquire. And, who goes and gets him? Somebody should. I don't know who it'll be. Like the interesting one for me was if Damian Lillard was going to stay, someone brought up like Toronto to replace Fred VanVleet's like pull up ability and do something like OG Anunoby, who has 1 year left and seemingly wants a bigger role.
Yep.
Send him to Portland for Anthony Simons and something else. Right. So I don't know. I truly don't know where this goes. This is going to be a fascinating like set of.
This is.
I agree. Yeah, go ahead.
No, this is as interesting a star like trade request as we've had in a while, just because I really like it's hard to figure out how Miami actually gets him, even though he wants to go there. And it's like it's very clear that's what they're pushing. When Chris Haynes is pushing it, like that means Damian Lillard's pushing it. And so it's just like we know what he wants, but like that offer stinks for Damian Lillard.
Well, it does. And here's the other thing too. Damian Lillard's still really good. Like really Damian Lillard is going to turn 33
last year.
Just came off of his best season of his career in terms of stats. Like you can say they didn't win, but that wasn't his fault. Like that guy is still a difference maker. Like he is drastically better than James Harden. Like he is a lot better than James Harden right now. It's like going from James Harden, who's like the 20th, 25th best player in the league, to Damian Lillard, who I would hear an argument that he's the top 10 player in the NBA right now. Like truly. And that's an enormous gap when you're trying to win a title and trying to like pair him with somebody. So yeah, that offer is not good enough. If I'm Portland, I'm trying to find any sort of deal that I can find that involves a third team. If I'm Miami, I'm trying to rope in as many third and fourth teams as possible to get assets.
But the thing, I mean, I just don't know how they get assets. That's the thing, is like they've kind of handcuffed themselves with a few of these deals. Like that's what they tried to do with the Strus thing, but they got a second round pick out of it. Like they didn't add salary, but like it's just they just don't have a lot of positive assets that they can deal and still be intriguing today. Because again, like Bam Adebayo would get 1 million assets, but you don't give him up because he's half the point of bringing Dame in is like Dame, Jimmy, Bam is an awesome trio. Like they all fit really well and they all complement each other and pick up for each other's weaknesses and all the things you want out of a trio. I get, but everything else doesn't.
Totally right. Totally right. I agree with you. I think this is going to take a while. I think this is going to take a good long while to kind of sort through and figure out. I think that's where we'll leave the Damian Lillard piece of it. Let's go to the Houston Rockets. So the Houston Rockets, we talked about the Fred VanVleet deal on what was that? Would have been Friday night, United States time. I'm a fan of that deal. I think that deal makes sense. Like, I think that makes sense because he can play both on and off the ball. You can play him with Jalen Green. You can play him with Amen Thompson. The thing that they sucked at the last few years was perimeter defense. Like truly, they've been abysmal to the point where they just leave their bigs out to dry. Fred VanVleet will fight around screens. He will be a leader. Like he's the kind of veteran presence and good point guard that I want on my team, right? If I'm a rebuilding team, I'm willing to overpay for Fred VanVleet, truly. Now, it's the rest of it that I've got a lot of questions on. Dillon Brooks for 480 is insane, truly. I have no idea who they were bidding against. I get it that they're going to front load this thing. I get it that like they're going to like make this thing as also people mentioned third year team option for Fred VanVleet. 100% agreed. I liked it when it was 3 years. I like it being 2 years with a team option. Whatever.
Team option makes it more palatable.
Guys. makes it more palatable. The Dillon Brooks thing, even at
descending
22 to start, descending down to 18 in 4 years, that is a crazy deal. I don't think he's worth 18 million. Like, I think he's a good player. Sure. I think he is a guy that is worth like the mid-level exception. Somebody should have given him the full mid-level. I think that was probably his leverage against Houston.
He's probably out there.
Being able to say like, hey, I can go get the full mid-level from somebody else. But Dillon Brooks is one of the most inefficient offensive players in the league, going to one of the most inefficient offensive like situations in terms of decision making in a while. And I just can't wrap my head around it in terms of that. I like it a lot more if they were able to sign Brook Lopez. The problem is that Brook Lopez did not sign there. He's re-signed with the Milwaukee Bucks.
Correct.
If it was Brook Lopez, Fred VanVleet, Dillon Brooks, your big, your guard, your wing, all of whom are really good defensively, you're creating a real infrastructure around Jalen Green, around Jabari Smith, around Alperen Şengün, and around Amen Thompson, like in Cam Whitmore. Great. Fantastic. The problem is that Brook Lopez is the difference maker there, not Dillon Brooks. Like, correct. Dillon Brooks made second team all defense. He's a good defender. He is truly like an awesome on-ball defender who will take on tough assignments, who will make life much, much easier for Jalen Green on the wing. And again, he'll fight, he'll scratch and he'll claw, and he'll make it much easier for Alperen Şengün as a big to be able to defend. Alperen may or may not be good enough, but one thing I know is we won't really have excuses anymore if Alperen Şengün is still bad defensively. And that, honestly, like that is a good answer to have. Yeah, that is a good answer to have for the Rockets.
Yeah.
The problem is that I'm pretty sure that Şengün might not be good enough defensively. And you now have Jalen Green and Alperen Şengün out there in all likelihood defensively, both of whom are not good on that end right now. And you can't, if you had Brook Lopez, you'd be able to hang your hat on defense every single night. Like, he is one of the 2 or 3 best defenders in the NBA. Truly. Like, he is a monster on the interior. He was the thing that this whole rebuild idea hung on, in my opinion, was Brook Lopez. Not getting him and then still giving Dillon Brooks 480 doesn't really work for me at all. That doesn't work a little bit for me, even.
Yeah, I mean, you do all this, you spend, and like, look, they had to spend the money. I know, like, you got to get up to the cap floor, or whatever. I think the biggest issue is, I think the plan was very clearly to throw a lot of short-term massive deals around and try to see where they're at when it comes time for extensions for the young guys, right? Like, they wanted to see where they were at and also have money coming off the books when they have to pay these guys. They kind of getting the team option again. That makes it much better for Fred VanVleet. When it was 3, that was my issue with the 3 years. Is like, then you had Fred on that deal when Jalen is going on his deal, and when so then you're going to be capped out just because you have that guy. That was not great, and that was, look, tremendous job of agent work from the Clutch team there for pitting Toronto and Houston against each other. There were no other teams to create bidding wars with this year other than Houston. Detroit and Sacramento used their cap space by the time free agency arrived because they had signed extensions, made trades, eaten into all of that. We knew Orlando wasn't really going to use theirs. There was nobody that, San Antonio, same thing. They weren't going to be a splashy team. They're going to be super patient right now and try to acquire vet. They're going to try to be a third team and stuff. There's nobody else to create a bidding war with. Getting Toronto to put the 4th year on the table and then being able to say, y'all got to put the 3rd year out there was great. I'm with you. I don't know where they created the bidding war for Dillon Brooks. Cause like, is that the tax for being the Houston Rockets, that you have to give $8 more million a year than the mid-level? Is that what we're saying with this? Like, that's a steep price to pay to just get a guy in, right? And like, we've seen these types of deals. And if it was a 2-year deal, sure. If you had 2 years, 40 something. If they give him the Bruce Brown, okay. If they given Dillon Brooks the Bruce Brown, what would your thoughts be on it?
Great. Perfect. Pay him 25 a year to start. Give him 250. Great. I love that. The problem is the length for me. It's a risky contract.
And again, that's when these guys are going to be extension eligible. Can you move off of it? Like, can you do the things you need again? And like, so you're running into this spot where like, I understood what the plan was initially.
Yep.
And I understand what the plan was if you get Brook Lopez, like you just said and explained beautifully. Totally. I don't really need to go much more in that. What I don't understand is why we're going full bore ahead on this. If I'm Houston, when those things start to fall apart.
Yeah.
And I know there was some frustration on that somebody reported there was frustration on Houston side. They thought they had Brook kind of done when they made the deal with Atlanta to clear space or something.
That there has to be some sort of breakdown there in terms of the process. Well, so like here, give me a second. Like, so say Dillon Brooks is actually good for the Rockets over the next 2 years, is in a 2-year, $38 million contract, extremely tradable. Sure. But here's the other problem. So like in the same sentence, Thomas asks, I guess the idea if Brooks buys into his perfect role, which is a defensive leader and like 6 to 8 shots per game whenever open and no dumb ISOs, then I love the pickup. I agree. He's not going to do that.
100%.
Dillon Brooks is walking into that team thinking he's the best player on the team. That's who Dillon Brooks is. That's what makes him so good defensively.
100%.
It's what makes him like genuinely somebody that has been able to stick in the NBA, and you have to live with it on some level to get the defensive value. Taking 6 to 8 shots and not ISOing, that shit ain't going to happen.
So this is like when everybody says, what if Trae Young buys in as an off the ball player? And I'm like, that'd be great. It's not going to happen. We need to stop doing this. We've talked about this for 3 years now. If you get a guy in who Trae Young can play off the ball and like maybe they could do this, then like you could do all these things. It's like, I love the theory of that, but we have too much physical hard evidence to say it's not happening. Like Dillon Brooks is not good. Like I totally agree. If you could tell me that was going to happen, sure. Like if Dillon Brooks could just be a defensive stopper who takes open catch and shoot threes and cuts, awesome. He doesn't do that.
Yep. Doesn't do that. So like, I wonder if Brooks and his agent squeezed them after missing out on Lopez and the Rockets were desperate enough to agree. To me, so like the only way this makes sense. No, truly. Yeah. The only way this makes sense is if it was like somewhat agreed to ahead of time. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to know if that's true or not. Where they had like an arrangement where they were going to go to Houston and everything like that. The minute that, Dillon Brooks starts to squeeze me, I'm just like, no, this is my out. I'm pivoting to Austin Reaves. Let's go give Austin Reaves 25. How much better is Austin Reaves than Dillon Brooks, Robbie?
I mean, like
drastically.
You want to talk about? Drastically. Well, I mean, and the reason and a big reason why it's, I mean, one, he can like handle the ball and do all those little things that you need, but also like you talk about a guy who buys into the role. Like that's part of the 100%. Value of a guy like Austin Reaves. It's like it's not when we talk about these guys, it's not just skill versus skill. It's like what's a guy going to come in and do? So when you talk about why is this guy worth more than this guy, it's in part. The reason you don't give Brooks that money is one that only enables him to think he's the guy more. Now he's getting paid the second most on the team. You just enabled him to be the guy more. What are you like? Seriously, though.
You did. You truly did. So like,
that's the problem.
That's why I'm confused. Let's go with confused on the Dillon Brooks piece of it. The process perspective to get here and get to this space, which by the way, I think they still have like 13 million left or so, something in that ballpark, because of the way they've structured these things. They've done it almost all as like sign-in trades where they've sent out KJ Martin to the Clippers. Yeah. They've sent out Josh Christopher to Memphis. They've sent out Usman Garuba and TyTy Washington to Atlanta. And I'd imagine that these are all going to be connected in some enormous like 5-team trade. Who the hell knows? Brooklyn's involved with like Patty Mills. I think somebody reported Patty Mills is going to
and then somebody's going
City.
to OKC. Like I was
Patty Mills going to OKC.
I literally looked. I was like, when did that even happen? Like I missed that
totally.
one. And then whatever
going to OKC. So look, they still could do something, right? But right now, on its face, it looks like the Houston Rockets trade, because they could have done the Dillon Brooks deal in conjunction with just the Fred VanVleet deal, right? And then you could have used the room exception to sign Jock Landale, which is my assumption of what they're doing anyway. So in theory, you could have just put Dillon Brooks and Fred VanVleet into space, signed Jock Landale. Instead, you moved Usman Garuba and TyTy Washington and 2 second-round picks, one of which they've gotten back in the Patty Mills deal, for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see. Maybe they sign somebody else for $12 million, but like,
I'm gonna go look at who's
right now. Truly, right now, it seems like you moved TyTy Washington and Usman Garuba for nothing.
Well, the problem is there's no more bigs. Like we're out of bigs. This was already a bleak center market, and we knew that. And then Nasri would have been the guy. That would have been the guy that you could go like totally. Defensive. Does he do it defense? Is he the defensive anchor? No, but like he's just like he would have been a floor raising player for them. Like if you're talking about pivoting off, like okay, but like yeah, there's just the bigs are gone, and so. I guess you bring Boban back. I don't know. Like,
what did you try and do? Like an undersized big, like Grant Williams or PJ Washington, maybe. Like try and get
PJ would be interesting to me. Like, well, Grant knows. Does Grant like Ime Udoka? I can't remember if they were they cool. Like, I don't know. What
I think they were. I mean, look,
was.
he had his best year of his career under Ime, so yeah, I would hope that it'd be fine. I think Grant is fine there, but like.
It's just not what you were trying to do. You've built a 10 seed for a lot of money.
Yeah. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking. And like, I guess like being in the play-in is a plus for them, right? Like
it's a step up.
That's great.
But you've clogged up some long-term issue.
Here's my real problem though. Are we sure they're a play-in team?
We're not.
Because I'm not.
We're not positive. But here's my issue. It's not just that. You've built a play-in team that's capped at a play-in team, I feel like, very clearly. Capped as a play-in team. And you've taken away some of the future flexibility for when you have to start making decisions on your young guys. You have taken away some of the opportunity to move off of them. And like, I don't think Dillon Brooks is going to be a super valuable asset. Could you move off of him? Sure. But is it going to cost you stuff to move off of him? That's probably the case. Yeah. Like if he's at 2 for 38 and you're trying to get off of him because you need to re-sign guys and maybe it's just not working out. Maybe you are tired of him taking 14 shots a game. Like you're probably going to have to give up something. It might not be a first round pick, but it's probably a second and you're not going to get a positive asset back for him or whatever. Like it's just, again, it comes down to, it's the same thing with the Jeremy Grant thing. Is like, who were you bidding against that made you give him 480? Like
no team option either, by the way, like no options per Kelly Eco. So yeah. And like, look, like the Usman and TyTy deal is apparently then thinking they could use the money to sign Lopez to an even bigger deal. Great. Yeah, wait until he agrees to the deal. Like,
who's forcing you to go through with that?
Yeah. Do you think Atlanta is going to be like, oh no, like we got to like, we're not going to take the 2 guys that are former first round picks that like help our depth potentially.
Right.
And the piece of this we haven't talked about yet is Jock Landale. Jock Landale signs to a pretty solid 4-year, $32 million deal where the last 3 years are non-guaranteed. He'll make $7.7 million. I'm guessing they're fitting him into the room exception. Great. Makes total sense.
Just doesn't give them what they needed.
Valuable, but yeah, like I get it that you guys think that like Brook Lopez, like that deal was done. The deal wasn't done.
It clearly wasn't done. Like, and I'll be fascinated to find out. I'm sure at some point we'll get some reporting on kind of exactly what went down with that and but like, I mean, Brooks made money you know, and I think it probably came down to what probably happened, if I were guessing, is he said, like, this sounds good. This is what I need from you guys. And and then he went back to Milwaukee and says, this is what I need from you guys not to go. And Houston might have taken, here's what I need from you guys, as like, oh, this is done. And didn't know that he was going back to Milwaukee. Because like 248 was more than I think most people were expecting Milwaukee to go for that, just because of the tax bill and everything. But like, they also had to. Like, there's just no recourse. If they could get him back on the short term, they were going to do it. So I'll be interested to see what the offer was for Brook in Houston, if somebody can ever kind of figure out what that was, how many years it was that he turned down. But yeah, that falling apart, but that's part of the job, man. You gotta have that thing solid. You can't make deals based off of your assumption. And like, it's a tough spot, and it's kind of the first time this front office has ever been in this situation, right? Like, this is the first time they've been in these kind of negotiations.
Here's the other thing too. Like, I like Jock Landale. I think there's like a non-zero chance Usman Garuba is like as good as Jock Landale by year 2 of that deal. Jock Landale will be better this year, but like, Usman Garuba is valuable. TyTy Washington was really good in the G League last year. Like, giving those guys a chance to like win rotational spots is valuable. I'm a little bit low. Like, I don't know that I'd call them capped. Like, you called them like capped out. I don't think I'd go that far. Like, I think that if Jalen Green takes a real leap and Alperen Şengün takes a real leap and Jabari Smith takes a leap, and then they just drafted Amen Thompson, great. Like, I actually do think there's a real ceiling here. The problem is that it's a process problem for me more than anything. Like, I get it. Like, if you're a Houston fan, like I would be excited that like my team is going to be more competent next year. I would also be pretty fucking pissed that just the overall process here was a nightmare. Mm. Like, is there a chance KJ Martin is as good as Dillon Brooks is next year? Like, truly?
Well, that was the one that, like, look, if good teams are trying to come get a player and you're a young team, like, that should set off some red flags for me. Like, maybe we shouldn't just be giving this guy away. Like, that's
Phoenix
if
was
good
like,
teams,
Phoenix
if good
Clippers were asking for a while now about KJ Martin,
and then they just kind of like gave him up for a second. Like, it was just really, yeah. I'm with you. And so what I'm saying is, like, I don't think I'm just talking about like the next 2 years. I feel like they're capped at a play-in team.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. I don't like long term. I have no idea. Maybe all the guys pop, but again, if you're asking for, what did you listed 4 guys need to pop? That'd be a hell of a hit rate. They should, if they can make that happen, like, kudos to them. I'm just saying, you've spent a lot of money. And I get wanting to get better, and I'm in on teams trying to take steps forward. I'm with you. I just think the process was bad to do it. And I think I feel like there just had to have been a way to get to what I think this team will be, and not spending the long-term money that they have. Again, the Fred thing being a 2-year with a 1, much better for me. I know you liked it.
Genuinely a great deal. Like, I truly think the Fred deal is great. KJ's value is probably overvalued from his 3-point shot making dropped off last year, and perimeter defense wasn't great. I completely agree with you. Like, he's an overrated perimeter defender, and he shot 31% from 3 last year. The problem is, it's almost like when you're playing poker. And analogize everything to poker. I feel like a lot of the time, like, it's almost like a pot odds thing, right? You're paying Dillon Brooks literally 10 times 11 times. I'm sorry, what KJ Martin is going to make next year. I would say there's probably like a 20 to 25% chance that KJ Martin is better than Dillon Brooks.
Well, and the other thing
I'd say 75% chance for sure that he's better, but yeah.
And also, like, if that's the type of guy that situation matters a ton for. Like, that's the type of guy that the guys around him matter a ton for in terms of like what he can bring you and the value that he can bring you. And so if you're trying to get better and you're adding better players, like, I think you need to keep some of those guys, like some of those guys who you think could be role guys. Like, I get that they've got their 4 kind of young guys they think maybe could be kind of core centerpiece guys. They're trying to figure that out, right? They're trying to figure out what it is with Jabari and Şengün and Amen and Jalen. But like, there's also value to drafting and keeping young guys who can be a 6th, 7th man, who can give you value at a cheap price when you have better players around them. And those guys don't tend to look very good in a situation where, you know, like, it's hard to be a good perimeter defender when everybody else around you sucks, right?
True.
It's pretty hard. It's hard to be a good defender at all if you're one of like 5 guys playing defense. So like, there's value in keeping those guys. And I think that can kind of get lost a little bit when you're talking about these rebuilding teams, is you want to bring in veterans, but it's like picking which guys to keep and which guys to bring in and all that. And I think KJ Martin's the type of guy that goes to a good team and maybe he pops a little more in a lower role. He's going to be maybe a little more efficient. He's going to look better, get better looks, be in a team defense that makes more sense for him. All of that stuff, I think, matters with those guys. And if you're trying to make your team better to be like that, then maybe you keep a guy like that rather than just kind of giving him away in this situation.
Yeah. Final thing here. You know, what do you think the absolute ceiling for this team is this season? Play-in tournament, I would say. Yeah.
Which would again is a step forward. And if I'm a Rockets fan, like, I'm excited. I would be very excited to be a play-in team. I'd be very excited. Like, this is a team that was almost the worst team in the league for 3 straight years. The process Sixers didn't do that. Like, we kind of don't. It's kind of gone on the radar how bad Houston has been, because we've had a number of those teams. Guys. So it's like, and they've been really, and so like, if they take that step forward and they're a 35 win team and they're challenging for the 10 seed, like, that's a really nice leap. Again, my problem is I don't know how much better they get from there, because I don't think there's a lot of long-term upside from the guys they brought in, and you're banking on a lot of their other guys having to take that leap to carry them there. And I'm always a much lower on seeing a bunch of young guys lift at the same time.
Yeah. You know, this is a great point from Great Ape. Like, it's not hard to be a great perimeter defender when Steven Adams and Jaren Jackson Jr. are behind you. Probably gets a lot harder with Şengün and 2nd-year Jabari Smith back there. 100%. Really strongly agree. Like, truly.
100%. That's what I'm talking about with KJ Martin, though. Like, that's what I'm talking about with a guy like KJ. Is like, again, it's hard to look good. It's hard to look bad with the right guys behind you. It's hard to look good with the wrong guys around you. And so, and that's the hardest. I think it's harder, in my opinion, to figure out how to build a defense right through free agency, because there's so many factors that go into what a guy actually does on defense. And so I think it's really hard. And that's why, like you said, it was so important to get Brook Lopez, because he is a guy that transforms a team in a way that these guys that they've brought in can't necessarily do.
I'll also raise this. Basketball Genesis brings up the idea of KJ Martin not being able to shoot. I agree. KJ can't shoot. Dillon Brooks shot 33% over the last 3 years from 3. KJ Martin shot 34% over the last 3 years from 3. Dillon did it on like 5.5 attempts per game. KJ did it on like 3. You know, I don't think either of them could shoot.
Sure. Yeah, it wasn't an upgrade. So
yeah, I think that's a big thing. Yeah, I'm just very, and then you have Jayshawn Tate still on this team. You still like, it's just a very strange conglomeration. Let's take a quick commercial break. We need to be done talking about the Rockets at this point. We've done it enough. A big piece of this too, by the way, they will be better next year because Steven Silas is not their coach anymore. I will give Rockets fans that. Steven Silas was, people know how badly I said they should have fired him 30 games into last season and continued to yell about that from the rooftops, but they didn't. And now they're with Ime Udoka, and we're going to find out how good of a coach Ime is. I think that people in Boston will tell you the first half of that season that he was there was really bad. And then the second half of the season was quite good. So we have kind of a mixed sample on him, and I think we'll find out. Hold on here. Dillon Brooks got all defense votes the year Triple J pretty much entirely missed, and Adams is not on the team. Yeah, I guess like he works hard on defense. He's a good on-ball defender, but like there's a very significant difference. I think like Dillon works hard and is a good defender. Last year was by far his best defensive season, in my opinion. Yeah, we'll see how that goes. Okay, let's take a quick commercial break. We got to be done with the Rockets at this point because we got a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yep.
All right, Robbie. Briefly, let's talk about Brook Lopez going back to Milwaukee, even though we've alluded to him in the last conversation. Brook Lopez, a 2-year, $48 million contract. Robbie, your thoughts on Brook Lopez going back to Milwaukee?
They had to do it. Like they like it doesn't matter at this point for Milwaukee. Like, what are you going to do if you lose Brook Lopez? Like, what does that team look like? Like, again, there's no replacement. We're talking about this right now. We were just talking about with Houston. Like, there's no replacement out there. You can't go get a center who does anything close to what Brook does for you. He is the perfect defensive big to put next to Giannis Antetokounmpo. Like, they had to do it. Good on Brook for finding a team out there that was going to give him the type of money that he could get them to give him 24 a year. And he deserves it. You know, I mean, he plays that well. And like, especially coming back last year, the year he had coming back, his first full year back from the back surgery. Like, I think there was a genuine concern when he had the back injury, like this dude might be cooked. And for him to come back and be, you know, an all defensive center again, be a DPOY candidate, that was huge for him to get paid this summer, one. And two, like Milwaukee just had no real recourse if they lost him. So they kind of had to, especially after seeing a few of their other guys walk.
Yep. Real quick. Someone's acting like Dillon Brooks got all defense votes. He got 3 all defense votes the year that like, you know,
so 3 Memphis beat writers.
Yeah. Right. Nobody's saying Dillon Brooks isn't a good defender. He's a good defender, but I think it's a lot easier to be a good defender when you're backed up. Okay.
Yeah.
So on Brook Lopez, I think, is somebody that, like Robbie said, is a total necessity, like an absolute necessity in terms of Milwaukee. Like if they didn't sign Brook Lopez, I truly don't know what they do. Like that team like might not be a contender if they don't sign Brook Lopez next year. Like truly, they need his defense to be able to reach the ceiling that they can long term. Now, you know, Brook's a little bit older, but Brook also is coming off of what I would argue is his best season last year. Truly, like I know he had a couple years where he averaged 20 with the Nets and like averaged. He had like a great year in Milwaukee in 2021, but I think that combining the offense and the defense, I think that it was better than it ever had been last season. I think he had a very real case to win Defensive Player of the Year. Ultimately, the voters went in a different direction. I completely understand that and think it's reasonable. He was outstanding last year, and he shot 38% from 3. Like, this is a no-brainer signing. He keeps them in the mix and allows them to continue to build around defense, which, by the way, some of the things that they seem to be doing, like on the margins with Adrian Griffin, like, I kind of wonder if they're moving more toward just trying to focus in on being the best defense in the league as opposed to, you know, trying to maximize the offense, which is what Bud, you know, tried to do.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Milwaukee is, like you said, I mean, if they don't sign Brook, I'm with you. Like, they're not a contender because there's not a replacement. And I just, that was such, bringing him back, you had to bring Chris back, you know, and you losing Javon, they got to find a new backup point guard because Javon was really good for him last year. That's one of my guys. I love Javon. I think that was a really good pickup from Chicago in maybe more of a vacuum than like Chicago's in just such a weird purgatory space. But like, I like what he does. And like, if you're not going to have Lonzo, you need another defensive guard along with Alex Caruso. Adding Javon so you can have 48 minutes of good defensive guard play at the point of attack. Very important for Chicago. Good job there. Milwaukee has some work to do to replace guys. I'm interested in like, it's pretty clear that they are not a top destination of the veteran minimum guys anymore. They were a couple years ago. They are not now. Phoenix very clearly is at the top of the list. LA still is near the top of that list. Golden State's even having a little bit of a tough time filling out their roster. They lost out on Eric Gordon to Phoenix. And you know, it's going to be interesting to see how they all shake out. Although I think Golden State's probably getting Dario is what everybody says, which I would like. Yeah. But interesting to see how Milwaukee fills out the roster, but you had to keep that core group together. I think their issue is they still have to figure out how to add shooting. Like I know that I get that they're kind of going in on defense, but like they got to knock down shots at some point. And I don't know. Like, I don't know what the answer is for Milwaukee, because like we know they're really good. They're going to be a great regular season team again. We'll do win totals in the fall, and I might have a Milwaukee over. Like they just win games in the regular season because they're really good. But come playoff time, they play. It's kind of like they're kind of Virginia-y as far as like how Virginia plays all their close games, and so they could get knocked out early on shooting variance, but they could win it all. Like we've literally seen them do the Virginia thing, like lose in the first round and win a title. The margins for them are so small when you hang your hat on defense, because you might just run into a team like Miami that shoots 40%. And I like, you need a little more like of that. I still think they need more offensive punch and a little more diversity offensively with what they can do. Yeah. Because at this point, I think we know what Drew Holiday is in the playoffs. Like I'm done trying to wonder if Drew can ever shoot in the playoffs. I'm done.
I agree.
I'm not doing it. Like he's just going to shoot 30%. And you have to figure out a way to take some of the shots away from him. And they just don't have that ability right now. And that's my biggest concern with this team.
Yep. So people are asking in the comments, why do you go to Phoenix instead of Milwaukee? Right. To me, it's like there's real opportunity to get paid in your next deal after Phoenix.
100%.
Like in Milwaukee, their rotation is kind of set. Like it's Drew Holiday. You're going to have Grayson Allen minutes. And then, obviously you have Giannis, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez, Pat Connaughton's there, Bobby Portis is there. Their rotation is, they have 7 dudes that they can play. In Phoenix, they have 4, which gives you like real opportunity to get paid on your next deal. Is what everyone is picking Phoenix over the other one. Yeah,
they're basically banking on themselves being the 5th, 6th, 7th guy and being in that playoff rotation. And I think a lot of guys look at what Bruce Brown did last year and they say, why can't that be me? And now I tell a lot of those guys, you're not Bruce Brown. But I get why they think that, and I get why you would want that opportunity. Or even you could be Jeff Green, right? Like you could be a guy Jeff Green, I think he was just on the biannual in Denver, but before that, he had signed like 5 straight vet mins. And now he's got a 1 year, $6 million in Houston to be an adult, that Houston needs. And so like, if you can pop on a championship team as a playoff rotation guy, especially, that's very key, is not to just be in the regular season rotation. You have to be in the playoff rotation.
Exactly right.
And it's hard to be in the Milwaukee playoff rotation. I would argue they need to find somebody who can be in the playoff rotation, but those guys aren't usually out there for the veteran minimum.
Next up, Austin Reaves re-signs with the Los Angeles Lakers, 4 years, $54 million. If I told you that a player was the 3rd best player on a conference finalist team, averaged 17 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds while shooting 46%, 44% from 3, and 90% from the foul line, coming off of a regular season where he was pretty good, you definitely think that guy gets, I don't care if he's a restricted free agent, somebody gives him 20 to 25 million, right? I can't figure out why nobody went for this and like why nobody truly decided to like put their money, because there's no max. Like the max is $99 million. It's a 4-year, $99 million deal. It's not like there is a leverage situation where you have to haggle and you have to do this and you have to do that. Like no team came to the table. Like I can tell you, there might have been one team, but like no team like truly came to the table. And I think that like honestly, a lot of that has to do with the Lakers saying they'll match everything. Like they put it out in the public as strongly as humanly possible that, oh, we're going to match everything. We're going to match everything. If I was Austin Reaves, like I'd be like a little bit frustrated with that personally, but I also bet you that like Austin Reaves is ecstatic to be a Laker, and you know, that helps.
It's a good situation to be back in. You're in a place that you're comfortable. You know, you fit alongside the stars. That's a big thing for role players, to know that you fit in the place with the guys who are going to want the basketball the most. Doesn't always happen. Sometimes you see guys who are role guys sign with a team and they don't gel and it impacts their next deal. I'm with you though. Like, and again, this goes back to my little rant at the beginning, and I was kind of joking about how we need dumb front offices again to throw around money. But really restricted free agency is cooked. And the Players Association has clearly given up on it as a talking point in the CBA thing. It's, you know, they don't care about whether the young guys get the money. It's clearly something they've given up on. And the owners have won and they get what they want. And like, I don't know what's going on, but like the Nets gave Cam Johnson kind of the deal that he deserved, and kind of good on Brooklyn for doing that, because they could have squeezed Cam once they made that deal with Detroit to send Joe Harris out. They could have squeezed him probably down to at least 4 for $100. They could have taken $8 million off of that. They could have squeezed him if they wanted to. They didn't, and got it done. And there's value in keeping the guys happy. And the Lakers, this was the max they could offer, right? Like the max they could physically offer was $454. So they were in a great position. So they can, you know, our hands are tied. You know, this is all we can give you. They could only match something that was more. And so, again, like it's great for the Lakers. They get a crazy value on a guy who, like you said, popped for them in the playoffs last year and was really great and looks like he fits exactly what they need. And yeah, I'm with you. Like if I'm Austin Reaves, I'm pretty frustrated that restricted free agency is in the place that it is. And I think that's just where we are in the NBA. It's been a while since we got that offer sheet that really tempted a team. I mean, even last year, it took a week and a half for DeAndre Ayton to find an offer sheet.
It took a while for that to happen.
And that was like the Pacers being like, well, we got, I don't know, like we got this, like we might as well. You know, it's restricted free agency is pretty much cooked. And Reaves, I think, was the one who lost out the most, but pretty much now you see guys be fairly realistic and just try to re-sign as quickly as they can, because you don't want to hang out there and wait longer, because you just lose more leverage the longer you stay out there. And again, the Lakers this was an ideal spot to be in. There's no market, there's no money. This is literally the most you can offer him, so you can't even act like you're lowballing him, even though it's a lowball offer for his value.
Right. Someone asked, like, what have the Spurs done? This is the team to me. Like, if I'm the Spurs, I would have like absolutely given him real money.
Again, I think I agree. I'm pretty sure the Spurs' entire goal this offseason was to be the third team in the trade. And I think they're going to be. I think we're going to see
at some point, probably,
the Dame trade or the Harden trade. They are going to be the third team in the trade, and that was their goal. Is they wanted to they're going to take on some fat expiring. They're probably mad they didn't think of the Bertans deal or couldn't make the Bertans deal, because that's the type of trade that they probably would have loved to make. Is, hey, this guy makes $18 million. We'll just absorb him. They want to do that, but I mean, we saw every team do that. Detroit did that. Sacramento, Indiana, less so. I mean, Obi Toppin's a real kind of asset for them. But OKC did it. I mean, everybody was just like, let's just eat into our own space. Nobody wanted space this summer, and Austin Reaves is here with as a value contract now because of it, and the Lakers should be very happy.
Yeah, they now have their third best player signed at $12 million a year for the next 3 years. Like,
well, and that's the way you make your third. That's the way you make your third best player your fourth or fifth best player too, right?
Yeah, like Zach Ament just said, he doesn't start over Keldon Johnson, so you're paying Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell, so you're paying $25 million for a sixth man. He's better than both those guys. Like, he just is. He is better than. I think Devin Vassell is awesome. I think Keldon Johnson's fine. He's better than both of them right now. He truly is. Like, he is a legit ball handler who can dribble, pass, shoot, who made 40% of his threes last year, who can defend at a pretty reasonable level, who is durable, who doesn't give a shit about his role on the team. That guy is super, super valuable. Honestly, like, you could play him at point next to both of those guys, I think, if you want to. The guy he'd start over is Keldon, realistically. Like, him and Devin, I think, are pretty close long term. But, like, Austin Reaves would be their second best player next year. Like, I feel pretty confident about that. I do. And I think he'd be perfect with the Spurs offense. That's the team that I think should have went for it and signed. This is now, to me, 454 for Austin Reaves. Let's call it 340, whatever it is, 342. 340, I think it is. This is now like one of the 5 best contracts in the NBA, I think, for the team. It is.
I mean, and it's the type of deal that the Lakers desperately needed. Like, they've been overpaying guys. They've been overpaying their top guy, or like having so many of their top guys on max deals and trying to build it. Like, they needed some like mid-level deals on their roster. And like, because like for a while it was like basically their only mid-level. It used to be Taylor Horton-Tucker was the only guy on the mid-level deal there. Like Kuz, and like now like getting Austin Reaves at that value is really big for them. Cause like I said, like it's the thing that can allow you to add another guy down the road that can be better than him, because you're not paying him at necessarily his commensurate cost.
Well, and here's the last thing I want to note. I do wonder if we need to get rid of the Arenas rule, just straight up. Like, maybe we make these guys that are, second year undrafted players or second round picks. Like, maybe we say that the team has bird rights on them or something like that. Right. Make these contracts unlike a normal veteran contract, which is the way they're currently treated right now. I think it would be smart to get rid of the Arenas rule, because all it does is it restricts money. Like, if I was on the player side, I would want to get rid of this rule. I think it is a bad rule that does not help.
It doesn't help those guys. But again, part of the problem with the Players Association is everybody has something different that they want.
Yeah.
And the guys who are doing the negotiating don't want that type of guy to get a bigger slice of the pie. Totally. Like, it's just straight up. Like, they don't want the young guys to be coming in and making more money, because it takes a new group making more money takes some money away. It's a zero-sum game. So somebody's making less. And so I think that's why we see restricted free agency and the Arenas rule and these sort of things treated the way they are. Is like, that's basically the paying your dues of the Players Association at this point.
Yep. Okay. Max Strus gets to Cleveland for a 4-year, $63 million deal. Cedi Osman, Lamar Stevens, and a second are going to San Antonio. A second rounder is going to Miami. I would guess Miami opens up some sort of trade exception. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Think so.
And the Cavs have also signed Ty Jerome to a deal slightly more than the minimum for 2 years, and then Damian Jones as well. They traded for him from Utah. The big one here is Max Strus. As Robbie knows, I am the biggest proponent of the Max Strus hive. I've loved Max Strus for years.
Sam is Strus pilled here.
From the moment I watched this man pull up in like his second game at DePaul, coming up from Lewis College on the D3 level, and my man was pulling up from 35 feet with 25 seconds left on the shot clock. I knew
a shot through the basket and a shot through Sam's heart.
That's right. I never thought that we'd be at the point where Max Strus is making $63 million in 4 years. I'm so happy for that dude. That dude is awesome. He proved it this year in the playoffs that he can be a good rotation player on a playoff team, and the Cavs need shooting. I love what the Cavs have done. The biggest problem for them against the Knicks is that the Knicks were able to just collapse the paint the whole time and sag off of Cedi Osman, Lamar Stevens, Isaac Okoro, Karis LeVert, whoever the fifth man was out there. With Strus, with Niang, with LeVert at times, you're not going to be able to sag off of them. I think that they have ticked every box they had to this offseason.
I think that they could reasonably be expected to. I still think the front court rotation needs work. Like, they got hammered on the glass, and I think they, I'm not sure Damian Jones coming in moves the needle at all for me on that. But like, basically, I think that's more internal improvement. Like, Jared Allen needs to show up in that series, and like you can't come out after and say the lights were a little too bright, which is like an all-time bad athlete quote for me. But anyway, beyond that, I'm with you. Like, you clearly had a deficit on the roster. You had to address it, and you go out and you get guys who you can trust in a playoff setting. And that's what they didn't have on the wing, right? JB Bickerstaff was just complete by game 3. He was just trying stuff, like he's like, I don't know, like, let's see if this guy can make it work. Let's see if this guy can make it work. And like, bolster the wing rotation to be able to go a couple deep with guys who have playoff experience, who you can trust to knock down shots, who you can trust to not be sieves on defense. That's what you needed. Is they needed guys who you don't have to worry about ceiling when you're talking about your 5th best player, right? You're not worried about, like, you're not trying to maximize a guy's ceiling when he's playing next to 4 better players. You need a guy who raises the floor. And that's what they had to do. This is not the same team. I don't want to, but Denver last year, what did they do in the offseason? They said, we have our group. We know who our core is. We have our core 4. We have to figure out a playoff rotation that can go 7 deep. And that's what they went out and did when they got Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Bruce Brown, is they shipped off some guys. They cut a little regular season depth, which I think is what you're going to see from the Cavs here. You get rid of a guy like Cedi, you get rid of a guy like Lamar, who were innings eaters, right? Like, those are guys who in mid-March you send out for 25 minutes a night and they're going to be fine and you can still win some games. But come playoff time, they just weren't going to be part of the rotation. Cleveland saw what they had to do. They said, we have to get a playoff rotation. We built a regular season team. Now it's time to build a playoff team. It's what Denver did last year, and they took a step forward. Cleveland doesn't have a Nikola Jokic. I'm not saying they're going to take a leap like that. I'm just saying that's the kind of situation that you're in. So now they can be a contender for the second round. They can maybe be a contender for the conference finals. Like, they can talk about those things and hope for a leap from their star guys. Maybe Darius Garland can take a step forward. Maybe Mobley again can be another leap type guy, but that's what you had to do. And I give them credit for recognizing that. Again, I'm not sold on the front court, mainly because I'm not sold on Jared Allen playoff guy. I'm wondering if he's a high-end innings eater, but that's just a question that I have about him. And that's just the thing he's going to have to answer in the postseason and show up in a way that he just didn't this year.
Yeah. And maybe he got punked by Mitch Robinson.
And maybe it was just a bad series. Maybe it was a bad series. Maybe it was whatever, but you're going to run into guys like that and you better be able to handle it. And so, like, he's got to be better. But again, that's a thing that you can reasonably bank on. Like, he's a talented dude. You can reasonably bank on him getting better and having tasted that experience as a lead guy in the playoffs for the first time on a team with expectations. But I do like what the Cavs have done. I'm with you. You had to add playoff rotation guys, and I think they bolstered that. Now you have 7 guys you probably feel good about, and you hope that Okoro can continue developing. And that's what you had to do.
Yep. This is a good offseason for them. Like, I think they've done everything they possibly could have to put themselves in a better position. I think they probably should keep Jared Allen for one more year.
I'm with you. I want to see what it
happens
is before I deal him, because also his value would be about as low as it could be right now.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, if you are if you're the Cavs and you could do something like Jonas Valanciunas and something for Jared Allen, like if the Pelicans decide we need a defensive anchor long term, just not in the short term.
I doubt they could get him, but if you get Trey Murphy,
oh, no chance. No chance.
But
you'd be.
I'm just saying, like but again, I think that's the type of guy you'd need to want to get there. But
yeah,
to move him this year, like you'd have to hit a home run, I think, to move him this year.
But Jonas is interesting for the Cavs as well because Jonas can rebound and is like physical and strong and tough. Yeah,
it is interesting. It is. I think maybe Memphis gives you kind of the blueprint for what to do with Mobley. Right? Is like you kind of want that bigger body Steven Adams type next to your rangy shot blocker. Like kind of pairing him with a guy who can get on the glass, who can absorb some of that physical contact and let him be his best as more of a movement guy and a help side guy, and moving in space, and he can be your pick and roll guy in space and that sort of thing. But like, I think if you're looking at how to pair him, and I think that's maybe the issue you're running into with Jarrett. So like, I get what you're saying, but like, I think they would have to really feel like it's a home run to move him now. And 100%. I don't think
100% agree with that. Okay. Next up, extension season. We're going to buzz through these. I've talked a lot about Domantas Sabonis signing with the Sacramento Kings on an extension previously because it just seemed like that's the way this thing was going. He signs a 5-year, $217 million extension with the Sacramento Kings, $197 million in new money. I believe that the number is like what is the number that he's getting for the next 4 years? It is, let's see here. Why don't I know the answer to this question? It's a large number that he's getting for the next 4. I think it's like
9 figures.
Yeah. It's an obscene number.
Yeah.
This was more than what I thought the renegotiation extension for Sabonis would be. I will say that. I do think this is something they had to do. Sure. And it was funny. I was talking to a good friend of the program, John Hollinger, last night. People won't be surprised to know based off of what he wrote on the live blog at The Athletic. Go look at the live blog. Great analysis there, especially if your Twitter is down, by the way. He wrote that he thought this was like a crazy deal, basically, for Sabonis. Yeah. And it's a lot. Don't get me wrong. Like on a pure value perspective, I completely get it. Here's the thing. The Kings have been, look, laughing stock is probably harsh, but like among people within basketball, like there's a reason that prospects don't want to go to Sacramento in the pre-draft process. There's a reason that free agents haven't signed there historically, right? Yeah. It's because they've been a disaster for 20 years.
Yep.
They finally get a good team this year that is competent, that has continuity. You have like young-ish guys in Domantas Sabonis, De'Aaron Fox to build around. You have Keegan Murray, you have Kevin Huerter, you have Malik Monk. You go out and you trade for Chris Duarte. Like you have a lot of guys that I think are like pretty valuable on this group. I really think that for them, particularly for their organization, there is a lot of value in being competent, for 4 years and making the playoffs for 4 years in a row. And just wiping that like organizational stink of 20 years off, frankly. Yep. I get it. Like if you want to make the case this caps their ceiling, you're not going to hear an argument from me, truly. Like I'm good with that. But I also just like, I think there's real value to this team like being normal good for 4 more years in a way that there isn't for other teams in the league.
Yeah. No, I mean like, I'm with you. Like I hear all the like with you. There's sticker shock to seeing his name next to that money, and like on the open market, I don't know if that's out there for him. But there's value in being, like there's cash in when you can on being the second best player on the playoff team on the team that hasn't made the playoffs in 20 years. Like great situation for him to kind of stumble into. He has bought into Sacramento. They want people who want to be there. And like, he recognizes this is a good situation for him. And like there's just a tax that you pay. Like we talked about what Houston is dealing with right now. Like there's a tax you pay to get the first guys in the building to make those steps to get better. My issue with Houston's was they haven't done it yet, and I don't think they've made the steps to get to where Sacramento is with what they've paid, but you still have to pay extra. I mean, I remember when JJ Redick signed the deal with the Sixers, and everybody like fell out over the 2-year deal he signed because it was like 2 for 40 something. I think, and it was like they're giving JJ Redick $20 million a year, and it was like,
right,
cost money to get adults in the room when you've been the process Sixers. Well, it costs money to get a star to stay in Sacramento when you've been the Kings for 20 years, and so you have to do it. I think more of my question for the Kings moving forward is, can you not fall in love with everybody? I think Sabonis is a guy you have to pay. Like, he's a centerpiece. Can you not Can you not fall in love with everybody on a team that maybe has a ceiling? Can you figure out the ways to make some moves to bring in your version of, the vet who can bump you up a level? Can you find that guy who will come to you?
Yep.
And like you said, that guy might not be out there for 2 more years because you have to prove it. Like, you're trying to get rid of 20 years of stink. It takes more than one.
Yeah. No, it does. It truly does.
And
you can't just go off of 1 year in this circumstance.
And
I think that's right.
I'm with you. And that's why they re-signed Harrison Barnes, is like, if the other option was giving Kuzma what Kuzma got, and then you really are tying yourself to a 3-man and you're like, is that enough? Then there's some value in saying, okay, Harrison, like, come back on a 3-year. Let's run this thing back. Let's be a little patient with being good, but also let's maybe leave. Let's see what everything is, because they still have to figure out what some of these guys are. And especially come playoff. Like, I just talked about what the Cavs did in figuring out playoff rotation. They got to figure out which of these guys can be playoff guys. Because, like, the way they shot last year, that's not going to cut it for a team built the way they are. Like, they got to figure this out. They got to figure out, is Kevin Huerter a guy? Like, I think Kevin Huerter can be a guy. I think he had a bad series. Like, we saw him play in the playoffs with Atlanta. I think he can be a guy. But, like, we got to figure out where Keegan Murray's ceiling is. Like, he was a guy that we all knew was going to come in and have a high floor as a rookie, right? Like, that was his whole appeal as a rookie. It was like, he's going to come in and he's going to be a rotation guy. But it's like,
if he has real ceiling, it's a thing for them.
And if he can go up, then that's awesome. But you need 2 or 3 years to figure that out. They're going to be figuring that out when it's extension time. So you got to get the Sabonis deal done. You kind of tread the water. You're going to hope that maybe you can find the Malik Monks of the world in free agency and be a little bit of a reclamation project type place. But you might be a place that we talk about Phoenix and being able to offer a playoff rotation spot and the value to that. I think Sacramento in the coming years might be a team that can offer a short-term 2-year deal at maybe a little more money and possibly say, hey, come to us to be or even just like a mid-level guy and say, hey, come be our 6th man, come be our 7th man in the playoff rotation. And maybe you can elevate us and go get more money later.
Okay, let's go to another team that is probably a couple years away from where the Kings are now as a team that has paid the tax.
Yep.
LaMelo Ball re-signs a 5-year, potentially $260 million extension with Charlotte. Will be more like 207 if he doesn't make All-NBA this season. Yeah. Also, Miles Bridges signs the qualifying offer for $7.9 million. Let's go with Ball first, because that's an easier conversation. This is a deal you have to give him, like, just straight up. Truly. You have to give him this deal. You
made the decision when you passed on Scoot, right? You made the decision when you passed on Scoot that this was the guy you're building around. I mean, like, if they draft Scoot, like, you probably give it to him, but like, they when you decide we're taking Brandon Miller over Scoot because he fits with LaMelo Ball in our eyes better, then you're giving LaMelo Ball the max extension. There's no questions.
Yep.
Plain and simple. He was an all-star 2 years ago before he got hurt last year and missed. He sprained his ankle 3 times and then broke it. Like, hopefully he can stay healthy. Hopefully, he can get that ankle right and not. I think he kept coming back maybe a little too early, and like we've seen guys with ankles where once it gets hurt once in a season and you're a guy that's that explosive and attacks downhill as much as he does, like it's just a ticking time bomb for the rest of the year. Hopefully the surgery, everything can get it kind of back to the stability it needs going forward to be back to who he is. And he was still insanely productive in the 36 games he played. He was great. You give him the deal and you don't have any regrets about it or any second thought.
No, it's absolutely right. Like you just have to pay him. You have to pay him and find out what he is. You have to find out if he's a, top 10 player in the league, or is he a top 30 player in the league? Like I think that there's obviously, as we talked about with the difference between Harden and Lillard now, there's a big gap between those two things. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we know which one LaMelo is yet. Is he an all-star or is he an all-NBA?
No.
Yeah. Yep. Next up, the Miles Bridges signing now. So Miles Bridges pled no contest to domestic violence charges, seemingly against his partner, who he has children with, at least one child with. I've been pretty clear. If I was Charlotte, I would not have brought Miles Bridges back. I would absolutely not do that, just point blank. And I want to commend Charlotte for not just like giving in and giving him a long-term deal. Sure. I don't think that you can't give a guy who just pled no contest to domestic violence charges a long-term deal, because on some level, if we are going to say that this person deserves a second chance,
he needs to show it.
It is a situation where he has to prove it and has to show it that it is a worthwhile endeavor. And that doesn't come in just 1 year. It doesn't come as soon as the court case ends. It doesn't come over the course of a summer, I think. It's hard. I'm glad that they are playing this shorter. I'm glad that they are I wouldn't have done this. I would have let him go. It's also worth noting that signing the qualifying offer, unless this has changed in the new CBA, I haven't read this yet, but typically under a qualifying offer, you have a no trade clause. I would imagine that this, basically tanks his value with the organization because he has a no trade clause and he also is an unrestricted free agent next summer. So effectively they are getting rid of him, or potentially getting rid of him. They will have his bird rights next year, which means they will be able to pay him more. And if he does the right things, does work in the community, does everything that he can in order to prove that this is not going to be what happened with his partner was an unfortunate incident as opposed to disgusting violence and like a potential continuing factor, then that's something. But I wouldn't have signed him. I would have let him go. I would have pulled the qualifying offer. I would have, moved forward at the end of the day. And I would have hoped that nobody signed him. Truly, I think it is gross that he's going to be making $7.9 million this year to play basketball. I at least acknowledge that the Hornets here, I appreciate that they didn't give in to a long-term deal where he is locked in for $100 million.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the reality of the NBA is it wasn't going to be that he wasn't going to get signed by anybody. We know that, as disappointing as that can be. We just know that isn't what was going to happen. And I'm with you. I think Charlotte was in obviously a really difficult situation for a team to be in, because he was legit their second best player before, and their foundational guy. And then all of a sudden, he does this and he's off the team and you don't know what's going to happen. And the league, this is one where I think the league needed to step in and be harsher. I agree. And I think the league coming in and saying 30 games and 20 of it we're going to count as served because he sat out a year. That didn't set up this summer for there to be the difficulty that there should have been for him necessarily in finding a deal. Cause it's okay, he's going to miss 10 games. And so it's for Charlotte, in an ideal world, we're just no, he needs to show for some time before he comes back to an NBA court.
Yeah.
But in the reality that we have, like, this is kind of, I think, where we were likely always going to end up. And like, again, kudos, like mild kudos for not saying like, here's 4 for $100.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, it's like, it's
okay,
like
we're working on a sliding
of,
scale. We're working on the sliding scale here, but it's
the reality of like the gross things that NBA teams do continually to show women that they don't care about them in regard to, you know, rooting for their team in sports. You know, it sucks. I would have absolutely, like I said, I would have absolutely not brought him back if I was Charlotte. If they were set on considering it, you know, I guess this is the best way that it could have ended, you know, in that regard. But yeah, no, it's a sliding scale. You're 100% right. Like that's where I'm at on it. Like I wouldn't have signed him. I think it's gross, but
yeah,
you know, this is probably the best circumstance for that. Just in terms
that, or
of,
they release him in somebody's, it's like a minimum or something, but that wasn't going to happen.
Well, no,
like,
I truly think if they pulled his qualifying offer, he's an unrestricted free agent. He probably gets more
somewhere else,
like money somewhere else.
I think so. So, I mean, look,
and
again,
that's the reality of the NBA being gross.
100%. And so, look, like, I hope I'm not, like, I guess I hope, but I'm not hopeful that like there is serious contrition shown and that he puts in incredible work and becomes an advocate and listens to the right people and listens to what people are asking of him and women are asking of him and what he needs to do to become the advocate to a community that, you know, like could use to hear about like how we can move forward and how we can stop having these incidents and somebody to say like why they were wrong and how they were wrong and all that. But I don't foresee that necessarily happening. I think what is most likely is he plays a year, stays out of headlines in terms of off the court, but maybe isn't necessarily making huge strides. And then we probably see him get a big deal next summer. That's just the reality of the situation. We can hope that maybe something different happens and that we see him be involved community-wise and involved in advocacy against domestic violence in a way that I don't foresee happening. But that would be what hopefully the league and the Hornets can push on him, and maybe he feels a need to do so as well, and hopefully does feel the contrition that he should for a disgusting thing that happened.
Yeah, no, it's gross, truly gross that this guy's going to make $8 million to play basketball next season. And the fact that we're talking about it like it's a good thing is gross, but
it's not.
I think it's the best, you know, it's the best outcome that was going to occur at the end of the day. If you hope he is, you know, punished in some way for what he did. Tyrese Haliburton says 5-year, $207 million extension with Supermax language. Indiana also trades for Obi Toppin. This is the going rate for Tyrese Haliburton. He's an all-star. He is the engine of a fantastic offense in Indiana. This one is just the easiest conversation in the world to me.
Everything we just said about LaMelo Ball, like, got to do it. No questions. And he's not coming off of the injury LaMelo was dealing with, but like they believe he's the centerpiece and this is the going rate for a young centerpiece guy. Yeah. I mean, like, here's something that I'll say is I think it's kind of cool that we had a trade like the Sabonis Haliburton trade where both teams seem very happy and seem to believe that they have the guy. Like I'm glad to see it work out that way because we see so many that don't, and one team is just furious they let go of a guy like Haliburton, or maybe or let go of a guy like Sabonis, and like it's nice to see everybody at least for a year very happy with how things shake out, especially for two franchises that can't afford to whiff on a trade like that, right? Like these are these are not franchises that can afford to miss on a deal when you're involving your best players. Like you cannot trade your best assets and not get great assets in return. And they both got really good to great players in return. I like and then moving to the Obi Toppin trade, I think it's a low risk flyer. You got second round picks, burn him. He fits kind of the vibe of that up tempo Indiana team.
Yeah.
He could be fun with what they like to do in transition, crashing the glass. We know he can do that. We know he can cut from the corner. obviously kind of like being a corner 3 shooter has always been kind of the swing skill for him in terms of like how valuable he is when he's on the floor. If he's knocking down threes, it's like, this is awesome. If he's not, you're kind of like, it's not ideal, but he can do other things. And he's a guy who's gotten better. You know, I mean, he came in as a guy who you thought older guy was a kind of a higher floor guy, but I've been impressed by how he's added things and kind of refined his role to embrace his role. And I thought last year was his best year as a pro by far. And I think he was very good. He even earned Tibbs' trust to be like, he was going to him in the fourth quarter of playoff games. Like, who could have foreseen that a couple of years ago? Good on Obi, good on the Pacers for grabbing him. I get why the Knicks did it. They were coming up on having to pay some guys. I don't love it for the Knicks, but like, if Julius Randle's your guy, like Obi Toppin's not as valuable to you. Just flat out. And I think it was a good move for Indiana and the type of move that they should be making at this stage. You talk about like teams that are trying to become a Kings-ish level squad. Like, this is a team that's still a year or two away from that, I think. But building around some of the right pieces and still got moves they can make, you know, still got veterans they can trade. Buddy Hield's not going to be there long, I don't think. At some point,
here's the other thing that's really fun for them. So they now have 48 minutes basically of Jarris Walker and Obi Toppin next to Miles Turner, who can space the floor. And I think Obi Toppin's going to be a super fun transition player. I think he's going to be a super fun guy for Tyrese Haliburton to play up tempo with. And also he's going to be a great pick and roll man. Like, this is the ideal place where Obi Toppin needed to be, next to a floor spacing, rim protecting center. We're going to get the best version of Obi Toppin, whatever it is. We're going to
find out what that is because
and he's going to get downhill and he's going to go. We're going to see if he can be John Collins, or we're going to see if he's just like another dude, right? That's the most fun thing about this for me.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we talk about so much how like situation matters, and like this is the one where like if we're talking about from an evaluation standpoint, this is the ideal. You want to see guys in their very best situation. And like you said, if he can't pop here really, like, then we kind of know what he is. There's not another place that you can think of that you would drop him and say like, he would be better there. He just needs the opportunity. Like, that's what we were talking about with the Knicks. It's like, he needs the opportunity. He's not playing with the ideal roster around him. And like, they weren't going to build a roster around him because he's not the type of guy you do that with. But like, it's nice to see a team recognize an opportunity to maybe get a value on it.
Desmond Bane signs a 5-year, $207 million extension with Memphis. I don't know what people expected. Like, I saw people going like,
freaking
this is
out
like
over
not
this.
a good contract. Like, Desmond Bane is a top 3 shooter in the NBA.
He's a
who
freak.
Also defends at a pretty good level and averaged 21 points a game last year. Like, this is what these guys cost. Like, point blank, you give them $25 million or 25% maxes and go from there. Like, maybe it's the sticker shock of 5,207. Yeah, but
it's seeing 200 million. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah, like, he's really fucking good. Like, Desmond Bane's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, this is what you pay those guys now, and it's kind of what, like, I think the thing people like, it's hard to remember when you see, because there is like, it's the same thing when you see Sabonis at 217. You're like, but it's like when you think of it again, like, these are all percentages of the cap. So like, this is the same deal that guys 5 years ago in his situation were getting, and we wouldn't have necessarily lost our minds as much when this was $100 million contract not too long ago. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but like, you also have Jaren Jackson Jr. on the value deal right now, right? Like, you can kind of afford this, and you're not on 3 maxes. Jaren's like 137, I think.
No, it's less than that.
107? 107? It might be 107.
Yeah. I'll look at it while we're talking. But
yeah, so like, that's the other thing that helps here is you got one of the guys. It's kind of like what happened in Golden State, right? Like, Steph was on a value deal, and so you could sign the other guys, and you kind of shuffle the cards a little bit in a way that like wasn't killing your cap room or wasn't killing your tax sheet or whatever, and so you could keep adding. And Memphis is a really good spot because they were able to get a guy who had injury issues. They still gave him the contract, but got him at a discount because he was dealing with injury things. And now he's a defensive player of the year and put a full season together, or almost a full season together. And now you can sign Desmond Bane without any hesitation. Like if Jaren was on the 200 as well, maybe you see Memphis consider like, can we do this? But with Jaren on 100, this is a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. It's like not even a question. Like here's the thing. Memphis is not going to go, like Memphis is going to go as far as John Morant can take them. Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson are good enough to be number 2 and number 3 options, I think, on a team. The question for Memphis, in my opinion, is John Morant good enough to be the best player on a title team?
Correct.
Point blank. Like Des and Jaren, like they're fine. Like they're going to be fine. Is John Morant an all NBA player, or is he we can build around him as the best player on a title team? We will see. Okay. Donte DiVincenzo signs a 4-year, $50 million deal with the New York Knicks. The Villanova Hive. Just getting back together, baby. Go Cats.
Go Cats. Yeah, I mean, it's
shout out Raleigh Massimino.
If you're a Villanova fan and you live in New York City, you can see all your guys. You got the Knicks with Brunson and Hart and Dante, and then you can go see, McCall down the road. Like you got them all. Like everybody's there. Like it's great. Congrats to Villanova fans.
Shout out my guy Anthony DiVerno, just living his best life. The New York Knicks. He went to Villanova, and he's a Knicks fan. I love it.
There you go.
Shout out Anthony.
Living the dream. Nice signing too.
It's a good signing.
Dante's a guy that helps you. They need guys who can do what Donte does. Now you kind of got him and Harder, guys that you can just kind of deploy in a variety of ways, not worry about them caring too much about their offensive role and wanting the ball too much, which is good when you have some of the guys they have on offense taking up touches. And they need some more shooting. Donte, good shooting year last year. He's been a good 3D guy for a while now. And he also is another guy. I mean, like the Knicks are hanging their hat on rebounding. Like he's a good guard rebounder. Like you talk about fitting skill with identity of a team. Like he's a guy that does things Tibbs wants, straight up.
That's 100% right. He's tough. He's physical. Like he will defend at the point of attack. He gives them depth. Like, look, if I'm them, like, I don't know what this means for Deuce McBride. I don't know what it means for some of these other guys at the end of the roster. Like, will he play over Quentin Grimes? Like, they're pretty close right now. Like, it'll be interesting. I think Grimes is much more upside, but like,
sure.
Who's going to get the guy that has, like, will Tibbs develop those guys? I don't know, but I really do think that this is a great team that will be fun to watch. I love this team like so much. They are everything I want.
It's so weird to buy in on a Knicks team. It's so weird to just be like in and just be like, yeah, this is the one. Like I didn't know how the Brunson thing would work out. Like I was wrong. Dude's awesome.
Yeah.
He's been like team's really good. My biggest question about them is always going to be they're very reliant on Julius Randle offensively in the playoffs. And that is not a great recipe as we've seen, but I like everything else they're doing around that large thing. Like everything else is great. And then I'm like, can he figure it out? Come play. Because I mean, we're on 2 straight postseasons where he has just really struggled scoring the basketball, which is his primary thing.
Yeah. Shout out 2016 Villanova Wildcats. Where's Chris Jenkins at? Where's Eric Paschal? We got to bring Paschal back. We got to bring Arch back.
Be great.
Also, like these guys need to go out and have a good time in New York City with Mikal Bridges.
That's what I'm saying.
Because he's in Brooklyn.
Mikal's down the road. Like everybody's hanging out. Josh Hart is like, hit my line, man. Like, let's go. It's great. 10 out of 10. Love that. Love seeing some college friends get back together. Always,
Okay.
at any time.
Good signing. Like, can play with Jalen Brunson, can play without him. Like, good versatility, all of it across the board. Okay. Speed round to finish it up. Jalen McDaniels, 2 years, $9 million to the Toronto Raptors. This is a good value signing. Like, this is just sharp to me.
When I say Raptors, I say we need another wing. I get it. I'm just like, it's never not funny when they sign the long arm wing. I love it.
I can't complain about this one because, like,
no, it's fine. It's a fine signing.
Yeah, he's so cheap for this. He's better than $4 million a year.
Again, no issue with it. It's just always funny because this is always the guy they sign, right? Like, also it's funny that they finally got their tall, long arm point guard. They finally have Dennis. Dennis has been spiritually. Dennis has been a Raptor for years.
He really has, hasn't he? That was who'd they draft? Did they draft Bebe over him? Or did he go before Bebe?
No. He went. So
what was it?
Yeah, Bebe was traded to the Hawks.
That's right.
In the same draft. Dennis was. God, I can't remember. That was such a. I remember I was in the Hawks facility for that one, and we did like a Zoom call. This is before Zoom call was really a thing. We did like a Skype video call.
Yeah.
Dennis for Germany. This is before any of that was really a thing. So we had like a TV. He was on his phone walking through the streets of Germany in the morning because it was like 12:30 at night or something when we got on the call finally with him. And it's like
walking in the streets of Germany, hunting for DeAndre Jordan.
I was just like, what are we doing? Like, incredible. That draft night was, because that was one of those draft nights where, like, when you work for the team, like, you're there all night because they made trades. And so you're just waiting for the draft calls to go through before you can do anything. Like, that's the worst part about working for a team is, like, you have to wait for the trade call to talk about it. And so you're just sitting there and you're like, all right, like, here we are. We drafted this guy. We can't talk. Like, we didn't actually draft this guy. We're waiting to get Lucas. Who shouts to Lucas? I love that kid. He was great. Just to talk to. Basketball wise, fine. Talking
basketball wise, he was very tall.
Very friendly young man. Anyway, moving on. It's just always funny when Toronto signs a wing. I'm like, that's way to address the needs, Masai. Just always on it.
Oh, I love it. Dallas re-signs Dwight Powell. Sure, makes sense. Why not?
Hey, at least he's only making $4 million a year now. At that rate, he's a value. At what he was making, suboptimal at $11 million a year. $4 million a year, absolutely fine.
Absolutely worthwhile. The Nuggets signed Justin Holiday. It's a good replacement for Jeff Green. Like,
yeah, I mean, as long as that's what it is, and he doesn't have to replace the Bruce Brown minutes, and he's replacing the Jeff Green minutes, awesome. If he's replacing the Bruce Brown minutes, step back. I assume that's what Christian Brown will be doing.
Yeah, I would bet you it's like Christian moves into the Bruce Brown minutes, and then like
that's my
Justin
guess.
Holiday moves into the Christian Brown minutes. Yeah,
and we'll see if Christian Brown can fill that role. Be interesting.
Yeah, and then one of the rookies is going to have to step into the like Christian Brown minutes, basically from one of the Jeff Green or Christian Brown minutes from last year.
Yeah.
Okay, Vasilije Micic, I'm sorry, signs with the Oklahoma City Thunder. The long-awaited arrival of Vasa Micic. I don't know, man. We're finally here. It took how many years? Probably 8 years, I'm guessing. 9 years. It took 9 years since he was drafted by Daryl Morey. Or not Daryl Morey, by Hinkie. It was Hinkie, I think. It was Hinkie.
Actually. He was a Hinkie pick.
Yeah. The summer of Sam continues. This is where we're at.
The summer of Sam.
Two-time EuroLeague Final Four MVP. He was the EuroLeague MVP in 2021. Helped FAs win the EuroLeague in 2021 and 22. He's a good player. He's really good. Like, he's a very effective pick and roll point guard. He's an immediate backup point guard. Like, zero. Like, there's a real chance he's a starting point guard, but he's definitely an immediate backup point guard.
That's helps him out. I mean, I'm interested by what OKC's doing. Like, I still like they're still taking it very slow, which I get, but also it's just like I want to see Shea on like a really good team soon, and I'm just like I'm itching. Like it's impressive that they show the patience to just like do this, but I'm just like, look at that guy. Like, let's do some stuff with that guy to see him on a really good team soon. And I get that this is the team building process, but I'm also like, can we cash in a little sooner on some chips, please? Maybe it's coming.
Yeah,
maybe it's coming. But perfectly good signing. They continue to add guys. Like I'm excited to see what they do with Chet this year. We're already on Chet muscle watch. It's a beautiful summer. When we're talking about Chet putting on like 15 pounds already. Love that. Yeah, I mean, it's a signing, man. Okay, so he's going to be solidly good again next year, back in the play-in hunt. We'll see kind of what difference it makes with the big fella in there.
Yep. And then Shams Charania has just reported 3 minutes ago. Colby Jones out of Xavier signing a 4-year, $9 million rookie deal, 2 years guaranteed with the Sacramento Kings. Shout out.
Sure.
Colby Jones. That's the first round pick. I think it's a great pickup for the Kings. I love it all. Okay. Robbie. We've gone through everything. Have we talked anything else? I don't think we need to talk anything else. Like, do you have any strong takes? You got to get off your chest. Like,
I think I did it with my opening, like my rant an hour and a half ago about restricted free agency. Like, bring it back. Yeah. Bring back offer sheets. That's all I ask for.
A couple weeks after Mission Impossible comes out, I will have Robbie on and we'll talk about
can't wait.
Dead Reckoning, because
Real
that is
cinema.
That is genuinely the most important thing that will happen this summer. That's all that matters. Is Dead Reckoning.
I just keep watching like the behind the scenes stunt stuff that they post. It's incredible. It's great. So I can't get enough. They should make a whole movie out of just behind the scenes stunt stuff. I would be in the IMAX for that too.
Just genuinely, like, at what point are we worried about Tom Cruise's like health?
Oh, I mean, look, he's going to die doing it. Like, I've accepted that. And I think he's accepted that. That's how he wants to go. Do you think Tom Cruise wants to be like old and like die? Like, you think he really wants to like just be like 95 and just go out? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. He wants to be like 75 skydiving and just like shoot doesn't open. And that's how we go. Like, that's how Tom Cruise wants it. And I will.
Daniel Garrett.
Oh, Ricky Fowler thoughts?
I missed by a week is my thought, because I had him 50-1 to win the US.
Shouts to Ricky, man. That's a grind. To fall as far as he did and to get back is not a thing a lot of guys do. So shouts to Ricky Fowler for getting the dub in Detroit. Finding his game again. I mean, he was lost for like 3 years. He won the Waste in 2019, and by like 2021, he was like not auto qualified for the US Open. So big time from Rick, and glad to see him back in the mix. Excited to see him back at the Ryder Cup this fall, because that's a lock now. And shouts to Ricky Fowler. Big win, and fired up for the Open in a few weeks. We'll get some. We'll dial in the bets for that.
The U.S. Open, I had. What did I have? I had Ricky, I had Scheffler, and I had. Who was the third one? Basically, the last guy off my board to bet on was Wyndham Clark, and I didn't bet on Wyndham Clark. I had I had 8 guys. It was Cam Smith, so I had 3 of the top 5 basically. And I had not Wyndham Clark, who was the last guy I did not bet on.
I had Wyndham in some matchups, and I had him on my list for some other stuff. But I was trying to trim, so like naturally he got cut off. I think of the long shots, I think I picked Thigala over him, and that was a mistake.
I had Thigala as well. I had someone else.
It's not ideal, but yeah, man.
I was able to cash out I was able to cash out at 4-1 on Rickie on Sunday. I was like, well,
there you go.
This is probably the right call. Like
There
this,
you go.
this is probably not going to end well, but
Well done.
what can you do? Okay, Robby, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell the people what's going on. Tell them about the Punkcast, where you can listen for all sorts of golf tips and betting.
Yeah, the Punkcast. Find it wherever you listen to podcasts. Me, Tom, and Chip. Every once in a while during the college football off season, we show up to talk about golf, and then once CFB season starts, we'll be doing our weekly picks as always. And then you can read me over at Dime on the Up Rocks. Find me on Twitter when your rate limit is not exceeded at our Kalland. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Go to The Athletic. Keep me employed over there. Subscribe. Hit the like button before you leave. Do everything you can on YouTube to support the show. Subscribe over on Apple, Spotify, whatever podcasting platform you use. We will be back. I don't know about tomorrow. I don't know about the next day. I actually might have to do tomorrow now I think about it, because I'm going to be on a plane the entire next day, because I'm flying to Las Vegas for hoops, or for Summer League, that event. It's been a long few days, Robby. Hoop Summit is not the right event. And I'll be there for a week. So excited about that. But until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.